Good morning and welcome to this REC webinar on COVID-19 and its impact on cash flow. I hope you can all hear us clearly. Please can you let us know using the text box for questions on the right hand side of your screen. Excellent, thank you. I'm getting a large number coming through now to say that the sound is okay. So just to let you know, we've extended the webinar today by a few minutes so we can answer as many questions as possible, and we're due to finish just after 11 o'clock. If you wish to ask any questions, please use the question box provided, which you've just responded to, and we'll try and answer them all. We'll ensure they are covered in the follow-up email if we can't, where you will also get the slides and the results of the poll questions. That should come out tomorrow. My name's Richard Charnock, and I'm from the REC, and I'm joined today by Paul Jacobs and Howard Greenwood from Love Work Life. Their consultancy provides ethical support to help drive both business and personal growth. Paul has spent over 40 years in the recruitment industry and is the former managing director of Office Angels. Howard has spent over 25 years in the industry and has a proven track record of managing businesses, increasing both their revenues and profitability. Also joining us today is Dave Pye and Bradley Platts from To Augment. At To Augment, the team aim to help you fully maximize your own unique qualities and build the business you desire. Dave is a well-known MD and CEO within the industry and is presently a non-executive director for both recruitment and technology businesses. Bradley has been in the industry for over 25 years as a recruiter, business director, and non-exec director. Bradley is better known to you all as the founder of Broadbean. We also have a guest speaker today, Philip Ellis of Optima Corporate Finance. Philip is a chartered accountant and now runs Optima Corporate Finance. He completed his first recruitment deal back in 1996 and has advised on well over 100 corporate finance deals since. He's acted as finance director for 2 public companies and helped to launch Sonovate, the contractor funding business. As you know, last week's webinar covered your thoughts and advice on considerations recruiters should make in these times, particularly asking, is this the time to push on with a strategy or change and take immediate action? As you know, there was a keen interest from the listeners in understanding your views on cash flow. So may I start us off by saying that cash is key. And in these unprecedented times, all businesses are proactively focused on their finances. So what is cash flow and how does it differ to generating new activities? Let me first turn to Philip for this question, please.
Thank you, Richard, and good morning, everybody. Delighted to see so many of you joining. I think it's fair to say that cash certainly is king, particularly in these times, and it's the lifeblood of any business. I think this is illustrated by the unprecedented measures that the government has taken to support businesses, as well as employees, but particularly businesses we're focusing on this morning, with various measures. So the CBIL loan scheme, which is still being worked out and finding its way as to how the cash is going to get into the system. But that scheme, I think, is a clear indication that government recognises the importance of cash in any business. So what can you do to help manage and prepare in relation to cash? Firstly, I think we should certainly be thinking about preparing a 12-month cash flow to see what the cash profile of the business looks like over the coming period, not least if there's an intention to make an application for bank support, because they will undoubtedly want to see how the business is likely to perform and what the cash requirements are likely to be. 12 months sounds like a long way out at this point, and 12 days is feeling quite difficult at the moment. Things are moving so quickly. But I think alongside that 12-month cash flow, the thing that I'd really like to focus on now is putting together a 13-week rolling cash flow. The idea of that is to give you visibility on a weekly basis of how cash can be managed and giving you visibility over the next quarter. And the key is not just preparing it and then looking at it and thinking about it every now and again, but really you should live by this document, keep it under your pillow at night, know exactly what's going on, and update it on a weekly basis so that you've always got visibility of the next 13 weeks. These are extraordinary times, and the reason that you would normally look at a 13-week period is, with it always covering a quarter, you're likely to have a VAT payment within that period. Of course, the government has announced now that there's no necessity to make the next VAT payment if the business has issues with its cash management. Nevertheless, 13 weeks is still a very valid period. It's far enough in advance to get some warning signs, but also reasonable to make some predictions. And the key really to this is to be very detailed, granular level of details. So not just sweeping assumptions, well, we think we might collect £50,000 of cash next week. Go through client by client, go through invoice by invoice if appropriate, and work out what's really going to happen. This is the time for realism. So you need to know what cash is going to be coming in and then managing payments accordingly. So clearly, as we've mentioned, the opportunity not to make a VAT payment this quarter. Time to pay arrangements with HMRC over PAYE will be welcomed. If you're furloughing staff, make sure that you understand what that means in cash flow terms. Remember, you still need to pay them and then make recovery from HMRC, hopefully within the next 4 weeks, although details on that still being clarified, so exactly what the process is. But make sure you know what cash is going out of the business. And as I say, update it on a weekly basis. So as 1 week finishes, add another one onto the end, update those intervening weeks. If cash hasn't come in, when's it going to arrive? If you've deferred payments, when are they going to be made? And I think that's the best tool you can possibly have to determine how much cash you're going to have in the business, how it's going to interact with your factoring or invoice discounting facility, if that's something that you use, and really making sure you've got clear visibility of what the cash picture in the business is going to be. To me, that's the key to getting through this very difficult period and making sure you've got suitable resources in place.
Thank you very much, Philip. Thank you. Let's get some views from the other panelists. Brad, what would you like to add?
Morning, Rich. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I agree with everything Philip said. I think looking at the opportunities to work with the government on their job retention scheme and business rate relief and their business interruption loans is something everyone should be looking at where relevant. But I really want to focus on recruitment activities just for a couple of seconds, because from the clients I've spoken to, there's a mixed bag out there as there was last week. But what I have sensed is that there is still placements being made and there are still vacancies that people can work on. And at the moment, I think it's really important for those running recruitment businesses that they get their very, very best recruiters working on the live opportunities, working on the premise that those opportunities aren't in abundance at the moment. I think there's a natural tendency to allow everyone in the company to carry on doing their work, but maybe some of the less experienced consultants now need help. And I think this is a great training opportunity to work with the likes of Zoom or Microsoft Teams and get junior consultants in on the calls. But those big billers need to be taking responsibility, I think, for all opportunities that are out there, because the most important thing right now is to get these deals over the line. And I think there are deals to be done. I'm seeing it from the people I'm speaking to. I'm not creating any kind of false illusion. It's not business as usual, as we know. But where you have got an opportunity, utilize the skill set that you've got internally in a way that you might not have done previous to this crisis, because at the moment, the most experienced people really do need to step up to the plate. So that's really the biggest thing that springs to mind at the moment from the conversations I'm having with some of the clients I'm working with.
Thanks, thanks, Bradley. Paul and Dave, do you have anything you wish to add to the conversation on this?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm speaking to you from my home, the same as everybody else. We're now going to name it the Hotel California because you can check out anytime you want, but you can never leave. So that's my position. I'm sure it's the same as everybody else's. We are, I think we are in difficult times. A lot of the discussions I'm having with my clients presently revolve around chasing debt. People are obviously very concerned about making sure they get in to their own accounts, money is owed. It's difficult because you have to find the right tone with clients. We do know that obviously one method, and we've just alluded to this point, of improving cash flow is to ensure that you get your own money in as quickly as possible and to some extent delay paying out. Well, our clients are thinking along those lines too. And to that extent, they're also looking at whether they're going to pay us as quickly as we would like. So, and I'm sure you guys are already on this, but it's a daily activity of talking to customers, trying to figure out how you're going to collect that money and finding the line between being too pushy, maybe even slightly aggressive. You don't want to do that, but at the same time, it's our money they're sitting on and we need it as soon as possible. So those conversations are daily, something extremely important, and ensuring that when you're looking at your cash flow going forward, as Philip was just saying, that you have a realistic view as to when you're going to be collecting that money. I think debtor days may extend further than perhaps they have in the past, and it's important to be realistic about when you can expect that money in. We can also, I think, look at potential incentives. I'm not advocating you do this, but I'm making a suggestion that if we can incentivize customers to pay us through potentially offering a percentage off of, for example, the invoice, something along those lines, or even where you have concerns about clients' payment plans, so you're getting some money in over a gradual period of time. What is important is to recognize which of your clients are likely to be perfectly safe over this period of time and will emerge perfectly healthy after it, and those, of course, that you are worried about in terms of their ability to emerge at all from this situation, because clearly if they go under, they'll take our money with them, and we need to make sure that doesn't happen. So I think that's extremely important. Just picking up a quick point that Brad's made, I think we've also got to look at how we can ensure that we're trying to find, if you like, creative methods of generating cash. And one of the things that I've been speaking to about with my clients during this time is looking for what are often known in our industry as backdoor placements. I can always hear you all sighing because we know it goes on. Hopefully it doesn't go on terribly often, but you almost all of you have a few placements lurking in the background that you're unaware of, and now's a perfect time to be going back, if you've been dealing in perms, and checking the interviews that you've arranged over the last, say, 6 months. Check on LinkedIn, have a look at those candidates, establish where they're working, because they will often change their companies, and then you'll be able to understand whether somebody has taken a candidate of yours on without your knowledge. So you may be sitting on fees that you're unaware of. So top tip, I think, and try it out and see what you come up with all of your consultants.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dave?
Morning, everyone. Yeah, morning, everyone. Dave here. I think that was a comprehensive answers from the team. I guess just in a short statement from me, I think most of us who are running small businesses have come from the sales side of our businesses. We're out there, we're used to being on the phone, we're used to being out with customers. Very few people running small, medium recruitment businesses have come from a financial background. And my encouragement for you as business leaders would be, now is the time to think like a CFO, to pretend to think that you are the financial director, and that you are looking after your back office team, that you are all over the numbers, and you are going to come out of this this disruption with the skills of a finance director, as well as the skills of a business leader and of a sales director, and all the customer experience that you bring as well. So you're actually going to come out of this a much more rounded business leader. That isn't to say that some of the people listening aren't really adept at all over their numbers, but if you can take on board what Philip was saying, and you're on top of your cash, you're looking at things weekly, you've got strong visibility on everything, then I think you're going to come out of this much stronger.
Thank you. And Howard, if anything you'd like to add to the conversation?
I think, yeah, we've covered it very, very thoroughly there, and I think there's a couple of things there. You know, Paul's talking about backdoor placements and thinking like a CFO. If we're thinking about how we can optimize our capable skills into our clients, I think there's other things that we could be offering other than just sort of simply sort of backdoor placements that maybe benefit our clients. I've certainly talked to some of my clients about looking at offering services such as outplacement services. There are lots of clients out there that have made people redundant rather than putting them on furlough, and therefore there's an opportunity that can we charge those clients to do an outplacement service with those candidates that they have made redundant and charge a fee for that, which means you gain a fee from your client, but also you gain some good candidates to sort of help bolster your candidate database when the market does return. So I think I'd be looking for new alternative ways of generating income from your clients from there. So there's outsourcing services. Could you do behavioural profiling of the business to make sure that the business knows exactly what they're looking for when they start to recruit again? So again, we can be on the front foot rather than on the back foot, and it's that time that we can now start to understand what our clients actually look like internally and what their plans are. And I think those sort of things are really important now when we talk about generating cash. It's not just generating cash now, it's generating cash for the long term as well. So embedding yourself into your client now, to me, would be really important. And part of the thing about regenerating money now is what can we do that's different than we've done before that we can offer our client that is add value to our clients.
Thank you very much. Just to expand on a piece that Brad was talking about, we've got a question from the audience. Brad was talking about putting your best recruiters and best consultants to work in the most effective areas. And there's a question from Wendy. That, I'll direct it at Brad, but please, any of you feel it's the right thing to jump in and add on. It's really about what sectors, Brad, and what types of roles are you finding that are still active, or you think that there might be some growth in coming up?
So from the clients I'm talking to, I think many that are working in and around the IT and digital space are still having live roles. As I said, the caveat to that is it is not business as usual, and there is a significant downturn in roles, but there are still some wins to be had in that sector. I'm also seeing live roles in and around compliance and L&D kind of areas as well. I'm seeing on the contract side from speaking to clients, there's been, certainly within that space, there's been a number of contract extensions. And in terms of Howard's point, looking at generating cash long term, I think with your contract book, looking at where you can get extensions and engaging with those opportunities earlier is something that we should be looking at now, being as close as we can to all of our clients to understand what opportunities are out there is something that I think is vital to all of us as we come out of this.
Thank you.
I'll just add to that. Sorry, Philip here. I'll just add to that. The sector that I'm seeing most activity in is, unsurprisingly, I suppose, healthcare. That's not to say, of course, that if you're not in the sector, you can suddenly switch to it, because sourcing candidates is the biggest challenge, clearly, and there are big compliance regulations as well. So I don't think really it's a time to just decide let's move into healthcare, but in answer to the question, that's the sector which unsurprisingly we're seeing the greatest levels of activity in.
Yeah, and I was about to say, I think the obvious area as well, for those of you involved, distribution, logistics. Clearly, we're well aware of the need for goods to be reaching supermarkets and stores and so forth. So clearly, if you're involved in any form of industrial work around those areas, or in HGV, LGV areas, that's still a very buoyant area, and quite obviously at this point.
Right, thank you. So what we're going to do now is it's time to get the listeners to participate a little. What we'll do is we've got 2 poll questions for you all, multiple choice, so no hard work involved. Excuse me. These are designed to give the REC and our speakers some guidance around some of the problems you're finding accessing government support or through the bank loan scheme, if indeed you've already attempted it. This is also, please do respond, because it's also, the REC is one of the key stakeholders in influencing government around these areas, and this information is vital to us to be able to take it forward. While you do these poll questions, as I say, there are 2 for now. I'm just going to return to the panel and ask them to give their top tips around the cash flow that people are finding themselves in now, and any extra cash generating activities. I think we've covered the going into different sectors or looking at different opportunities. But if we can go to your top tips, please.
Okay, I'll kick off, shall I?
Sure.
Won't surprise you to hear me say getting this 13-week rolling cash flow in place, I think, is just absolutely crucial for any business that's got any sort of cash strain or needs to manage the cash carefully. And alongside that, if you need help with it, get help, get it done properly, get your projections put together properly. So if you are looking for government support, they're going to want to see a credible set of projections, and for your own purposes, you need to make sure you're really understanding this and on top of it. So don't be afraid to seek help if you feel you need it. You may well end as CFOs, but you may not necessarily be CFOs right now.
Thank you.
I was just to add to that, from what Philip was saying, the visibility thing is so important, that you have the visibility, particularly for the next few months. And Philip also used that phrase, this is a time for realism. And I think that's a really important phrase to use, that we need to be realistic where we are each week. On top of it each week, what does the next week look like? And that's a difficult thing to do when we're in environments such as this. But if we can inject that tone of realism into each of our businesses, then I think we're going to navigate the next 6, 10, 12 weeks, whatever we're facing.
I would just add, just to try and look at keeping as close as we can. I appreciate it's very difficult at the moment to clients. Hopefully, many of you out there have what we would have termed trusted advisor positions with customers, and you are still able to speak to them at this stage because you have mobile numbers and so forth. And I think just to be close to them from a pastoral care perspective, just to check on them, make sure they're okay, keeping close to them and so forth. But also timing is important. And a bit further on, once we get over the next sort of hump, next 2-3 weeks, I think there's an opportunity to start talking about their plans going forward. And I think, if we look at the 3 key points that every business follows in terms of building business quickly, the classic upselling, cross-selling, and increasing margin scenario are really where your mind needs to be as we go forward. Perhaps now's not the right time because clearly everybody's sort of hunkering down at this moment, but it will pass. And we hope that within 3-4 weeks, we can start talking much more positively to customers about their plans for the future and how they're going to relaunch their businesses. And at that point, you want to be looking at how you can, as Howard has mentioned, how you can start upselling to them to see what other revenue opportunities will be available to you.
Thank you. If I could just jump in before anybody else does. A few of our listeners have answered in the question box, and apologies. Could you please just answer on the screen where it asks you to click and identify one, so that we can capture the data. And then we are getting quite close to closing that first poll. So if you could do that as soon as possible, we'll move on to poll 2. And I've got a question from the audience for our panelists. It's a moral question, and I'm really pleased that we get these kind of questions. And it's really about, if we take the advice where we put our best recruiters on the best or most likely jobs to convert to help our cash flow, what's the moral question around paying them commission when we may or may not have had to furlough other consultants within the business? I'm deliberately not giving the name of the individual that has posed the question, because I wouldn't want to isolate them in any way, but I think it's a very fair question, and it demonstrates the high morality that the industry has. Can I ask the panelists, what's your view on that? So you put your best people on the best jobs. They could potentially earn commission, but you've had to furlough other staff. And what do we think? So I think, Brad, that was originally yours. So let me turn to you first and see what your view is on that, please.
Okay, I'm not sure I've got a definitive answer, and I really don't want to sit on the fence on this. But one thing I am convinced of is that how you treat your team, your staff, will be remembered for long after this crisis. And I think that's true of every client you recruit for as well. So I think recruiters at the moment are feeling the pressure. Their world has changed as much as those that are running the business as well, as this impacts all of us. So I think you've got to find the balance between incentivizing them for the bigger picture, rewarding them, but recognize that, you know, who do you want to be working with? What is their value proposition? What is their purpose? And are they aligned with how you run your business? And you're looking for everybody to pitch in. I do think people need to be rewarded, no matter what state the economy is in. Salespeople are motivated by commission, but if you have put people on furlough, the reality is, if you've got the guys that are working there being able to deliver, then hopefully your business will be in a better position when we come through this, and then you can bring the people back into the business. So there is an opportunity there for those that remain to be rewarded. Maybe you might need to come up with a slightly more creative scheme, but ultimately, if everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet with regards to just getting the money in as quickly as we can, hopefully everyone will benefit in the future. I'm not sure if that answers fully, but I think the way we communicate and the way we treat our people is so important, and most of the devil is going to be in how we communicate and the kind of open, transparent discussions you have. But I do think you should find a way to reward people in some which way, shape or form.
Dave, I think that is, sorry, Brad, I think that's absolutely right in what you're saying there. But I want to take that a little bit further and think about the company, and what you're talking about there is, yes, we should be giving it to the best recruiters to fill those jobs, but I think it should be a team environment and a team spirit that gets us through this. And therefore, if you're spreading that work across the team, and the key person in that business, the biggest biller in that business, is orchestrating everything and developing everything, and therefore you could have split commissions going across the business so everyone feels involved in the business and doesn't feel isolated. Those people on furlough, there's some of those roles maybe coming through their client. So it's their hard work that has brought that opportunity to you, even though someone else is filling that role. So there may be an opportunity then to even siphon some of the commission off to that person. And so again, you're sort of engendering that team spirit, because as you said there, you'll be remembered long into the future how you've treated your team and how you've treated each other within that business, and it'll be seen from the outside. So from a great sort of the EVP point of view, it'll be really good to see what you're saying to people as you start to recruit new people into your business, how you treat them during this crisis is really important. And I think that team spirit, that team camaraderie now needs to be absolutely brought to the forefront of the business. And though the main people in the business will be delivering and orchestrating that, everybody else should have a part to play in that as well.
Thank you. And just to feed in as well, there's a couple of suggestions that some of our speakers have come up with. So thank you for those. One of them is banking bonuses. So consider banking bonuses for and to be paid when furloughed workers have returned. Is one option. And I'm not by any means saying that anything that has been said or these are correct for every business. It's a business decision. And the other one is to convert bonuses into team-based commissions and pay those again in a banked way, but when things have returned out of this crisis. I'm just going to ask now, can we see poll 2 now, please? And we put up the results to see what's come up so far. So it would appear that for banking, for approaching the bank, there is a few that have approached the bank and have found them supportive in the first instance, but there's a few now that it's not, or the majority have not done that, so it's not applicable at the moment. However, 13% saying that they haven't found the bank supportive, so that's quite significant. And you'll see that the REC and other trade associations have pushed the government to take action, and last night's speech at 5 o'clock demonstrated some of the government's view on that. I think maybe now is the time to move on to the second big question that we are going to ask our panelists, and that's really about forecasting. So being able to forecast your cash is crucial to ensure you make the right business decisions. How can you project sales figures in such extraordinary circumstances? Now, I think Paul's probably best to kick us off on this one, please.
Thank you, Richard. Okay. You know, I've learned in the past during very difficult times, and in particular, I remember a situation where I was trying to save a business that was essentially insolvent, and I had a forensic accountant work with me during that period of time. We successfully saved the business. And one of the things I learned from working with her very closely during that very stressful period was that when you look at how you forecast during these crises moments, it's best to try and do 3 types of forecasts. And in fact, when you're presenting to banks and presenting to institutions looking for finance, I kind of expect this. So best case is where you start. You know, what does the best case scenario look like? So optimistic view, not ridiculous, but optimistic view. You should be able to validate why you've come up with those high level figures. Then you have your middle position, your realistic case, and that's generally speaking where your heart and mind sits. You believe that's probably what you're going to do. And then of course, worst case scenario. So you're not actually putting together one forecast, you're putting 3 forecasts together. At least then you can plan accordingly. And if we sort of circle back to the whole issue of cash flow, your cash flow then kind of keys into those 3 areas. I would probably look at my cash flow from the perspective of my worst case scenario, as Philip was talking earlier, and work forward from there. Everything's the bonus on top of that. I think it's also a question of knowing your client base particularly. Hopefully you're close to your clients and you can still remain relatively close to them during this lockdown period. And you need to really try and figure out what their rate of acceleration is going to be when they return to work. You know, they're going to be very profit oriented as we are. They're going to want to hit the ground running fast. And you want to be in their wake, if you like. You want to be working with those organizations, the sectors that are going to be off and running real fast. Now, your knowledge of those customers and the sectors is going to be very relevant here, as is the case with your consultants. And it's almost back to the earlier point, in my opinion, you flood those areas, those sectors, those disciplines with consultants, regardless of which particular areas they've worked in the past, because you have to be tactical. So if the opportunity is in a specific area that's going to grow very quickly. Flood that area with your consultants so you can get maximum opportunity out of it, rather than go back to what we were doing before, because some of those sectors, as we come out of the situation, will be sluggish and slow, and you'll have dormant consultants not generating profits, productivity for you. So I think you have to be extremely tactical in that area and make sure you're doing that. I think another important point here is that we can expect, because I believe this is not going to be dissimilar to the way we've come out of recessions or even depressions in the past, we can expect the interim market to really come back very quickly. So if you're already doing interims, you're dealing with contractors, PAYE temps, that's going to be a quick growth area. A lot of our clients are going to be reluctant to take on permanent staff initially. They're going to be nervous about that. And it's also a slower process. They will, on the other hand, especially the customers that are going to be moving fast out of the blocks, they're going to need extra staff. Now's a great chance for us to be speaking to candidates to figure out who's immediately available. And there's a lot, unfortunately, because of the times we're in, there are quite a lot of those right now. So very soon we need to be just establishing and enhancing our talent pool, making sure we've got great people immediately available, and in the not too distant future, be thinking of how you're going to market those people to your client base, because they are going to want short-term labor before they start engaging permanent staff. And there's an enormous opportunity there. And of course, the IR35 repeal didn't do us any harm, so that makes life a little bit easier for us going forward. I think the other last point I'd make before I let the other guys talk is the getting consultants to make projections. Ask your consultants what they think they're going to be doing. Of course, we know what that generally means. You get some that highball their projections, a lot that lowball, but that should link into your own 3 projections. So you've got that sounding board, get their sentiments, get their sense of it. And of course, lastly, when we get back into this properly, and although we should be doing that at the moment, focus on the inputs. So it's about the activities, as we know, the daily activities that generate the outputs. So when you're thinking of your projections for sales, you have to double back and talk about calls made, CVs sent, interviews arranged, attended, all the usual KPIs that we all know and love. Make sure that's solid and review it constantly, because we're in a fast moving environment at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, Paul. I think, when you're forecasting, what you like to do is look back and see, well, what happened 6 months ago? What happened last year? Where were we at this point last year? Well, of course, it's all very different now in this period of disruption. And actually, we've only got the last few weeks to look at in terms of the change to our business, the change of state to our business. But we are probably going to be faced with this for the next 6 or 8 weeks. So in some respects, we're going to have this sort of 6 to 10 week period, we hope no longer, where we're in this this more unusual activity. And each consultant at their desk at home is now running their own business. And I think if we as leaders can help our consultants to see that they are now running their own business on our behalf, for part of the team. So Paul's point about the forecasting, we know that as sales come in, and there may be fewer, but they're going to come back to those consultants. How many candidate profiles did you get out? How many candidates did you speak to? How many times have you updated the system? I think I said last week, the bane of most leaders' lives is consultants not updating the system because they don't like doing it as much as they should. Some are very disciplined, some less so. There is no excuse at the end of this period for each of the companies on here not to have the most up-to-date system. And if you can be speaking to the candidates, making sure you're updating the system, speaking to all the clients that you know, and the clients in the individuals in the clients that you don't know, that you're going to find out. Just keep speaking to them. That way, if you do that this week, then next week you can compare to what you did last week, and then the following week you can compare again. And just over this short period of time, these couple of months, you're going to be able to forecast which of your consultants are performing at the level that you think is optimum. And hopefully some of the sales will come from that, but at least you can see them managing and running their own desks that will help you forecast what's coming up.
I think both those comments there from Paul and Dave are absolutely spot on. And I think I'd go a little bit further on that, that your CRM now becomes a really important tool, and you can understand now how important it is when we start to look at forecasting and what we're doing. Yes, it's unprecedented times, and so forecasting sales and going back and looking at what we did last year, 2 years ago, etc., is almost finger in the air stuff now. However, one thing doesn't change. Your clients, what your clients do and how your clients recruit always remains something similar. So when you're looking back at your forecasting and your consultants saying this client's going to be doing this client's going to be doing that, etc., if you know what their time to fill is and what your fill ratio is with that client, then you know whether that client is worth talking to and experimenting on with regards to, can I go and talk to them about helping them with their recruitment process, help them improve their recruitment process. Because if you're telling them it takes them normally 6 weeks to recruit, we could cut that down by doing this and doing that. You're adding benefit and value to your client. If you can control that recruitment process and increase your fill rate with that client, again, you're adding them benefit to your company. So understanding your customers and what they do when they go through their recruitment process is really important. The change that's happening now is that digital wave has come. So now interviewing over video, etc., becomes more the norm and will become the norm as we come out of that. So can we expedite the recruitment process and foreshorten it, therefore quickening the time for us to fill and working with our clients? Can we work with our clients how to conduct video interviews, etc.? So understanding that is really important. So we'll go back to KPIs, as Paul taught us, in key performance indicators. To me, it's also about keeping people informed. Keeping people informed of what each company is doing. So when you go back to your consultants and they're predicting this, you can go back and say, well, that client takes this amount of time to normally recruit. Can we do something with that client to help them and foreshorten that, and therefore increase our speed of recovery and not just the other way around? So it's not just about forecasting figures, it's forecasting the clients and what they actually do when they recruit. Can we forecast the clients that recruit quickly and efficiently against those that don't?
Guys, this is Brad speaking again. I agree with all the points made there by the three guys. I've got a slightly different slant, not that hopefully complements what they're saying. And Paul mentioned about being profit orientated and working with profit orientated businesses, and Howard just mentioned about understanding the customer. I think the best way you can project your sales figures is understanding your relationships. So are you do you have a transactional mindset, or is your mindset driven by relationships? And I think at the moment there's a shift in mentality out there in society long before this crisis. I touched on it last week when I suggested that it is possible to build a business with kindness and compassion and still make money. And I gave a talk to a group of people at the beginning of the year, and I talked about purpose, performance and profit. And I think in an ordinary market you can make profit with decent performance, but to create true value you need a purpose. And that comes down to the strength of your relationships and understanding what your clients are all about, and therefore how you want to align yourself with your clients. I think some of the big investment houses out there will really be focusing on these businesses that have a purpose moving forward for the global economy and their views on sustainability and everything else along those lines. So I think now is an opportunity for you to be able to work out what kind of clients do you want to work with, how do you want to align yourselves with them, and whilst you might not be able to embark on conversations and find out what their recruitment plans are over the next 2 weeks, you can work with them in a consultative manner, develop that relationship, understands what their motivations are moving forward, and how you can help them through the current situation we're all in, and be there to support them when you come out of it. And as those conversations develop, as Paul alluded to, it might be too early to ask the direct question in terms of what their plans are, but if you develop the relationships and you double down on that now and you align yourself with their purpose, I think you will then be able to project what you will be able to do as you come out of this, because you'll have a better understanding of what's going on out there.
Thank you very much. Philip, is there anything you'd like to add to what's already been said?
I think knowing we've got other topics to follow and having listened to these esteemed experts on this subject, I think there's a lot of sense in what's being said. I think I don't have anything of real value to add, so I'm happy to move on. Thanks, Richard. Okay,
thanks, Philip. Well, let's do exactly that then. So let's move on to our third area, which is all about risk mitigation. So how can I identify, if I'm a business owner, how can I identify what is critical to my business plan if we face a similar financial situation in the future, and what can I do to reduce that impact? Let's turn to Dave, if I may, to answer that one for us.
Okay, so I'm going to answer this in a simple mnemonic way, a 5-letter word for anybody taking notes on this webinar, YALOP, which hopefully you can remember. The most critical thing to your business plan in the next 6 weeks or the next year even is you. If you're a leader running your business right now, you are the most important person to what's going on. So my message to you is take care of yourself. Look after your mental health. Stay fit in this time. My wife is a physiotherapist. She would say to you, sit up straight when you're on your computer at home, because that's where you get your back problems. You need, as a business leader for your company, to be ready, to be strong for the upturn. That's the most important thing. Keep yourself well. The second thing is stay aligned. The A for align. Stay aligned with your business partner or your shareholders. Some of you may be single owner businesses. Some of you may have business partners. If you've got business partners, make sure you're aligned with them and you're communicating with them. Tell the truth to each other. How are you feeling? Where is your head at this time? Because in a period of disruption, honesty between owners is what is going to win out. This is a chance to cement your relationship. Many people running their businesses have set them up because they've come out of another company. They're with good friends, with good mates, and they're now running a business. And suddenly this hits us for a short period of time. So stay aligned with each other. The L really is to keep learning, because this is an opportunity for you as business leaders to learn. I mentioned earlier on about becoming a bit more like a CFO, but just use this as an opportunity to keep learning. Look at TED Talks, webinars like this. There's plenty out there for you to keep learning to make yourself stronger as you come out the other side. The O in the mnemonic is over communicate, keeping your people informed as much as you can and as much as you feel appropriate. And then just do it a little bit more, because I think Brad has said earlier on, this is your culture and your purpose is so important. So what's critical to the business plan is to keep communicating with your people. And the last thing is the P, and whether you like it or not, what we're all doing now is preparing for the next normal. What we thought was normal 6 weeks ago, as we were getting on with our businesses and running our businesses, suddenly has changed because of this disruption, because of what's happened. So now we're going to have a next normal. It's not a new normal, it'll be just something to come along next that we will navigate for. And all the things that you're doing as leaders right now is helping to prepare for that. So take that on the chin. This is making you stronger, and hopefully those 5 things will make a difference to your business plan.
Thank you, Dave. It was very useful mnemonic. Howard, what's your thoughts on mitigation and planning for the future?
I think some of it touches sort of in what we've already been talking about, and I think planning and mitigating the future is about understanding where you are now, what your capabilities of your business are right now, and then looking at where you want your business to be in the future. And I think all the things that Dave went through there, wellness, alignment, learning, over communicating and preparing, is absolutely all part of that. If you're going on a journey, you normally have a map or a sat nav to help you get to your end destination. Now's not the time to sort of get all panicking and thinking, right, we need to go here, and just set off and hope you get in the right direction. You need to have a direct plan of where you need to be, and that plan then will prevent people from panicking. It will prevent people from losing their way, but it means your plan has to be fluid, because you have to be able to adapt, as we are now, every 24 hours as things change. So I'd have to make sure that the plan is in place to mitigate anything coming up. You've got to look to the future and think what might happen, what could happen, where would that be? And there you're going back to almost your forecasting. What's the best case scenario? What's my middle position? And what's my worst case scenario if we went down this strategy and went down this route? And then work your strategy and work your plan accordingly to make sure you know exactly where you're going. And I think that to me is all about mitigating any issues, is having a plan and then working the plan. It's not your normal business plan. And I go into lots of companies and they say, have you got a business plan? And they go, yes, I have. I go, can you show me it? And they go, it's in my head. And I go, right, okay, we need to write it down. Or they go, it's written down. And when they pull it out of the drawer and it's covered in dust and there's mouse footprints on it because it's been in that drawer for so long, you suddenly realise that they're nowhere near their plan. They're nowhere near what they started to think about when, they first created the plan. Now's the time to have the plan, stick to the plan, and drive that plan to your future and where you want to be.
Thank you. And before I turn to Bradley and Paul, I'd just like to point out we've opened up the third poll question on the webinar. So please do complete that. That's about what's your business done to address cash flow difficulties right now so far. But now going back to the original question, can I turn to Bradley next, please, and the risk mitigations and reducing impact?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Rich. So I concur with what Dave and Howard said. I think some really good points there. I think you want to consider how you want to be perceived coming out of this. I think this is a great opportunity to look at how you've done things to date. When we ask the question, how can you identify what is critical to my business plan? I think moving forward, you need to look at where you might have spent money on things that you might not have needed. So you've got to look at the tools that you use, the resources that you've got to make sure you're getting true value for money. I think one of the biggest things to consider moving forward to mitigate risk is how you work with your teams and your staff, and the training processes that you got through, the expectation people have that are coming into your business, or the expectation you put upon them. So everyone is perfectly clear on what they need to achieve, because I think there's probably too many businesses out there that might be carrying a few too many people that aren't necessarily performing, because business might have been going generally well, so you're fairly relaxed about it. But I think if you can work on the premise that you're really focusing on making every one of your team members a key member and helping them work to be the best version of themselves, what you'll then have is a company that's working at its maximum potential. And in terms of a change in market, when there is a downturn, if you've got everybody pulling in the right direction and they're well trained, they're aligned with your vision, they're aligned with where your clients are, they respond well to the candidates, then those relationships will hopefully see you through a period of uncertainty, should it rise its head again in the future, which undoubtedly it will do at some point in time.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we can just turn to Paul now, just to cover that last question for us. And I would urge for the remaining people that haven't done the poll to do that for us, please, so that we can then close that poll off and move forward. So Paul, risk mitigation.
Well, obviously, I agree with everything the guys have said. There's some outstanding points. Just picking up on Brad's point, and we can circle back to an earlier discussion around how you treat your people. And I've been in recruitment 43, 44 years, and we talk about the changes, and obviously over the last 5-10 years, massive changes in our industry, as has been the case in others that we support. But the one thing that has never changed is the fact that if you recruit great people and you treat them well, and as Brad said, you train them well, get the best out of them, then you have a great business. And you know, I'm always interested to see, particularly the smaller businesses, the new companies who emerge in our industry sector. And let's not forget that something in the order of 75% of this recruitment industry is made up of SMEs, and they often, from a profit perspective and from a client relationship perspective, have better returns than their larger competitors. And I think it's a lot to do with the passion of the people that work in the company and their alignment with the behaviours and values of the leaders. And I think that's a very critical point, that we must remember to constantly look after our people, because they in turn will look after us. Couple of practical points. And I work with a lot of recruitment companies up and down the country, and we're forever talking about the rainy day slush fund, that fund that you hope you're never going to need, because how could it possibly be that you couldn't make a single fee in 3 months? But of course, here we are in this extraordinary situation. And I think going forward, you know, what we've got to do is make sure that we have sufficient funds at any given point, so that you've got an absolute bare minimum of 3 or 4 months worth of slush, if that's the expression, rainy day funds put aside, aiming towards 6 months. At least it gives you the opportunity to sleep well at night. And certainly the businesses I'm working with at the moment, of course, they're concerned, very concerned about the current situation. But almost without exception, they'll be fine, because they can get through the next 3-4 months, because they've been putting money away for the so-called rainy day. And I think that's a very important point. And I'll just come back to one last point, and I made it earlier. If you're not involved in provision of interim staff, contractors, temporary staff, looking forward, it's something you absolutely need to do, because what we've witnessed yet again in this situation, I've seen it many times in the past, is that when there's an economic downturn in the country, the first thing that happens is permanent roles fall off the edge of a cliff. So if you're a perm-only business, you're always in a risky situation. You have to build interims, you have to build a contractor book or PAYE temps. You've got to do that, because that will help you through the difficult times. And in the ideal scenario, in more normal times, you want that revenue from your temps and contractors to cover the costs of your business, so that, God forbid, perms fall off, you've still got enough money to cover the cost of your business. So I think there are a number of things looking forward, and I think we don't know what the new world of work is going to look like yet. But one last point I'd make is this. Question for you guys. Do we need, if you have reasonable size offices, do you think you're going to need those offices going forward? Because one thing we've recognized is that in a very short period of time, people have been able to be demobilized to work from home, and in many instances working very capably from home. Is it possible we could have smaller offices and work shifts on people coming in for 2 or 3 days a week, working from home a couple of days a week? Can we do more desk sharing? Can you get your costs down in relation to your fixed costs, i.e. offices? It's something to think about. I definitely feel that one thing we've proved during this period is that we're perfectly capable of working from home, as many of our clients are. And so I think it's a question of looking forward and considering what the modern world of recruitment is going to look like, not the one we left behind a few weeks ago.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much. Some very valid points there. I think we'll close this third poll now, and wait for the technology to catch up with us, and then we can publish the results. One of the things that is clear from the poll is that many of you have furloughed staff or considering furloughing staff. It's also very clear from the responses or some of the questions that we've been asked. We're not going to answer the specifics, and there are some very specific questions around the furlough. But what I would urge you to do is to, on the slide deck when you receive it, you'll see a link to the REC COVID-19 hub, and we have recently published, so earlier this week, published the some guidance around furlough and some documents around furlough that you can use. It's available to everybody, so if we have some listeners on that are not REC members, you can access the hub there. Unfortunately, some of the legal advice is still only available for insurance purposes to members only, but you can access the information there. Okay, so I'd like to move us on to the last question we're going to look at in detail today, which is there is still so much uncertainty around the economic situation, the global economic situation. And is there anything we can do to protect our businesses, such as should we cease brand awareness activities? Let me turn to Howard for this in the first instance, please.
Thank you, Richard. I think that there's two questions there, so I'll separate the brand awareness and protect our business, and I'll cover them both from there. We've covered an awful lot today already that will help protect your business. Having a plan in place, budgeting, having a 3-month rolling forecast of what you're doing, but allocating budget to key activities is really important. I think as we think about what's going on in the marketplace, there'll be 3 types of clients that we should be looking at. There'll be the client that when we hit the bottom will bounce back very, very quickly, because as we've said, they are high profit orientated clients and they'll want to drive a recovery very, very quickly. You'll get those that hit the bottom and then almost hockey stick, sort of very slow, quick and gradual curve coming up. Maybe because the market that they've been has been affected overall, etc., but they have a good strategy of recovery. And then you'll get those that hit the bottom line and then just run across the bottom line. Either some of those companies will disappear and some will recover. But what you've got to start to think about is where you're pointing your staff at and who you're pointing your staff at to protect your business. So understanding your clients, we've said all the way through this process and all the way through this webinar, is really important. I think the key thing that I've always done in time of recession and coming out of those recessions is now is an opportunity to train and develop my staff. So irrespective whether they're on furlough or they're still working with you, you can still train and develop your staff. And I see this, as Dave says, this is not a downturn. This is a disruption of business. So I see this as almost a pre-season from a sporting point of view. So if you say, look at the Olympics, working yourself towards the Olympics, you will still be doing small competitions all the way through. So you'll be still having small requirements that you need to fill, but you're building yourself up to hit that primary objective to be as fit as humanly possible when the Olympics start, to give you an opportunity to win a gold medal. You do that, you've got to train and develop your staff so they are even better and even more skilled when that opportunity starts. Because as Paul said, when the bell goes off and your client's running out, sprinting out the blocks, you don't want to be chasing your clients, you want to be with your clients. So therefore it's not an opportunity to think about what's going on, it's an opportunity to say, right, we need to be training. So where you spend your money in this current climate is really important. So having a spending paralysis might actually paralyze your business. And what I mean by that, there's a lot of companies I'm saying I'm stopping spending on absolutely everything. Well, I don't think that's absolutely right. And when we start to think about your other part about brand awareness, you have to keep pushing your brand out there. You have to make sure your brand know where you are. And to give you a prime example of that, in the 1930s, Wrigley's, after the First World War, coming out of the First World War, they put lots of brand advertising out in shops, etc., etc., and they became the biggest selling chewing gum brand in the world. In the 30s, they thought, well, we're now the biggest brand, we don't have to do that. So they stopped doing their brand awareness. All of a sudden, their sales dropped massively off because nobody was buying their brand because it wasn't being pushed in their face constantly. So we need to push that in the face constantly. So spending on the right things is really important. And I think at the moment you need to invest in your data and invest in your database. So it's an opportunity to really clean your CRM up. There are tools out there. There are, AI out there that can go into your database and absolutely penetrate your database, sending information out to candidates so you can categorize candidates on what they're doing. Are they looking for a job? Are they skilled to do certain things, etc., etc., which means your database becomes even more a place to go to. Do you think last year, the comment that I've been hearing constantly is around about 6 to 7 out of every 10 placements made last year were filled by candidates that were already on a CRM, However, those 6, 7 candidates were bought a second time and a third time through a job board. So we're throwing money away where we could be saving money. So again, if we want to protect our business, we've got to protect what we spend on and how we go, where we start to spend that business. So cutting brand awareness is definitely not. We should be thinking about a positive mindset about spending money in the right areas. So having a spending paralysis is not the key thing. We have to think about business as usual. So the money that you're coming in, proportioning some sort of saving account, that rainy day account. We will have to pay the VAT at some point. We've got the 20th of March and the 30th of June, they've been deferred, but we will have to pay that VAT at some point. So do you put your VAT money away, or do you spend it if you have to spend it? So it's about absolutely thinking about everything that we need to do to protect our business. But to me, to protect your business is protect your client base, train your staff, and think about new opportunities that you can be growing in this marketplace. The closer you are to your clients, when they start to run, if you're running with them at that time, then you're going to be in a really good position to protect your business and come out and be on that immediate bounce back rather than that slow hockey stick bounce back.
I think that's great advice, Howard. I think there's a famous saying, isn't there, that people will forget what you say to them, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And I think one of the ways of protecting your business in this disruption in these next few months is to make your clients feel loved, to make your candidates feel loved, and to make your staff and feel loved as well. Easy thing to say, but I absolutely would not be not spending money on getting the brand out there. You know, you don't have to spend a lot to offer advice to clients. You can produce a piece of thought leadership or a white paper. You can put something on LinkedIn. You can set up a YouTube channel. There's all sorts of things that you can do, even from home, to engage further with your clients. You can point them to snippets of information that you've seen or that you've heard. But if you are keeping in contact with them, if you are making them feel that they are valued, then you're going to protect your business, because you're giving them intelligent resource, you're giving them advice, you're giving guidance. I guess you would say also that I would say this, wouldn't I? But I would be speaking to your advisors, making sure that you've got someone to speak to. You may be on this webinar and not have anybody to talk to outside of this webinar. We'll pick up the phone to one of us as well, because we'd be delighted to offer you some help and guidance. Because Boris doesn't do these press conferences on his own. He needs advice from people as well. And I think we all do. I've got someone who does that for me. And I think it's really important that to protect our businesses, we keep talking with one another, we keep encouraging one another, but most importantly is that we make people feel special, and that will help us protect the business.
I couldn't agree more with Dave's views there, and I think it's just essential that, as I said a moment ago, we look after our people and keep as close to clients and candidates as we can during this time. Strike the right tone of voice. I think that trying to sell anything too hard at this point is really bad timing. I think you've got to be offering the hand of help, being kind, considerate, generous towards the people that you work with. That is, of course, your own people, your clients and candidates. Karma, things come back to you 10 times over. Remember that, we all would like to be treated the way we would wish to treat others. And I think that the way we'll be judged as we emerge from this will be how we reacted as leaders during this time, keeping our heads, being calm, giving the right advice. And I mean, picking up Dave's point, there's a reason that the four of us guys are on here, and to a large extent that's due to something that you can't buy. We've had years of working in the industry, and with all of that comes a deep level of wisdom. A lot of that wisdom has come about because we've got the bruises and broken bones. We've been there. We've walked into walls. We've done things ourselves that have not always worked, and we've learned from those things. But equally, we've done some pretty good things over the years. We say modestly, and we can pass that stuff on everybody as well. Last point I'd make is this: please don't cut back on marketing activities. I've always said, and I used to, before I was the MD of Office Angels, I was also involved very heavily in marketing and PR for them. We had outstanding marketing and PR in those days. We were getting 12 times more media coverage than the entire industry put together at that point, and that is a fact. And we were generating a huge amount of media connections and talk about our business during that time. And the upshot to that was quite remarkable. Firstly, it boosted morale with our own people. People loved working for the business because they constantly saw our name in the press, heard people like me on the radio or the television. All of that was very evident. It was a fabulous side product to it, and we won the Sunday Times Best Companies Awards, came in the top 10 several times as a result of that reputation and the way our people felt about us. And candidates and clients flocked to us because they knew who we were and what we stood for. But finding the right tone is important here. During this time, we don't want to be too silly with some of the things we put out on social media. Excuse me. We need to be, certainly a light touch, a bit of humour is fine. But remember, what we find funny is often not necessarily found particularly amusing by other people. So be careful when you use humour. At the same time, we don't want to be overly serious because there's enough of that out there, isn't there? So we don't want to be pushing all the bad news. We've got to find the right balance. But please don't cut back on your marketing and brand awareness. It's so important to keep it out there. And of course, these days, you don't have to spend an awful lot of money in projecting your brand. Social media can make you look like a huge business, even when you're a relatively small one.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everything. Sorry, Rich, just one quick point. I'm quite conscious of time as we're coming to the close. I agree with everything the guys have just said. I think it comes back to also what we spoke about earlier about having your purpose, and that purpose is where do you want to position yourself? I think now is the perfect time to position yourself as a thought leader. It goes beyond the transactional side. It becomes deep, meaningful relationships. Understand what your clients do. Understand what your clients stand for and align yourself with them. And as a result, you can then use really cost-effective marketing activities which do not need to have fortune spent on them to position yourself as someone that understands your sector, that is supportive to your sector, and is able to have an opinion about what's going on from some deep-rooted knowledge. And now's a great time to go out there and learn. So I think you can have some really cost-effective ways of keeping your brand awareness out there. And it goes down to the business leaders and each and every recruiter working within the company. Understand your sector to a level that you've never done before, and you will position yourself at a much higher level than you've ever had, and I think you'll get returns from that.
Thank you very much, everybody. Philip, is there anything you'd like to add as a last comment?
Well, just slightly different perspective, if I may, on protecting the business, and it comes back to something that Paul mentioned a few minutes ago. If you're either already in the interim or contract market or looking to move into it, one thing that you must consider is the payment terms with your clients. So making placements, having to pay contractors and perhaps not being paid for up to 90 days by clients can really erode your working capital. It's a hidden cost which eats into your margins as well. So if this is something you've been relaxed about in the past in terms of payment terms, now's really the time to sharpen your pencil and make sure that you're collecting those funds quickly. I know it's a different perspective from the whole brand awareness and marketing thing, but I didn't want to let this pass. I think it's certainly something that should be focused on. So don't just take a relaxed attitude of getting temps and contractors out there if you don't know what the payment terms are going to be, and then do your best to make sure your clients stick to them.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank all our panelists as we draw this to a close. I apologise if some of you have lost some of the visuals during the webinar. We're bringing this to you from 8 different locations across the UK and trying to put it together online virtually. So, but what I would like to leave you is the results of the last poll. We have got, as you can see there, 97% of you are confident, or there's a little confident, but it will take time. So you're confident in one way, shape or form that your business will be able to bounce back. And that's a really positive thing for us to leave it on. And I apologize if that screen came up or the question screen came up while we were still debating the previous questions. We did have some technical issues, but thank you all for listening and joining in with your questions. We've tried to answer as many as time is allowed, but don't forget, we'll be sending out the slide deck with all the links and all the contact details for our speakers. And a recording of this webinar will also be available both in that email and on our website, and you can also catch last week's as well. Please join us next Thursday, same time, well, same place as well, and we'll have the next webinar in the series. If you would like to suggest a topic to be discussed next week, on the slide deck you will see a carol@rec.uk.com email. Please email suggestions to that email address, and we'll see if we can include it in next week's webinar. Many thanks to you all, and goodbye until next week.